las fotos o el cuadro de su hija desaparecida del mundo antes que yo naciera. One challenge for me for my Dominican and my Spanish accent journey has been trying to figure out where exactly to start. What resources should I be using? Should I be talking with native speakers? Or is it enough just to practice at home? And how long will it take for me to officially say that I sound like a Spaniard or that I sound like a Dominican? And since I am no expert when it comes to accents, and I really just started to focus on developing accents within the Spanish language last year, there are a lot of questions that I really do not know how to answer yet. For example, last year I went to the Dominican Republic twice, and then I started to really change my accent to sound more like Dominicans, but it wasn't like I had a big plan. It wasn't like I did a whole bunch of research to do that, but I was just mostly doing a lot of imitation and then just having a lot of exposure to Dominicans, and also starting to watch YouTube videos really helped to develop my accent. But then the question for me was, how exactly do I sound Dominican, or how Dominican do I sound? What is the level? I didn't really know how to actually measure my accent, if that makes sense. And then especially when I had non-Dominicans ask me if I was from the Dominican Republic. So when I started to hear this same thing over and over again, then I really started to believe that I had a fairly strong Dominican accent. But then this year rolls around and then I actually lost my accent a decent amount. So it's kind of hard for me to explain, but I just know that my accent is not as strong and is not as thick as it was, I would say, last year and like towards the end of last year. There's a big difference, and it's really hard for me to maintain this accent. So now, after having this experience where I'm starting to lose my accent, which I never knew was actually even possible, I'm really starting to question how good my Dominican accent was and if I really did sound Dominican. I'm also very confused about if the way that I was developing my Dominican accent last year was very effective, because again, I didn't have any plan. It just happened very naturally the way that I was trying to imitate Dominicans. And it really took only a few months of doing that to where people started to actually tell me that I sounded Dominican. But right now it's just very unclear where exactly my level is at, and then trying to measure that. Especially because many of the Spanish speakers that I have talked to in the past have always been very kind to me and say to me that, oh, you sound very good. And this was even 3 years ago when my pronunciation was a lot worse. So it's kind of hard for me to figure out if my accent really is good or not. Right now, the way that I measure my accent for how good it is and how strong it is mostly just by comparing it to native Spanish speakers. Now, I know that this is not a perfect method whatsoever, but I really don't know any other way of doing it. But it's also very hard to track because I don't really know if I'm actually advancing with my accent or not. Does it sound more thick? Does it sound more strong? That's kind of up in the air right now. But at the very least, what I have done is I've been able to figure out what an accent really is. So I know now it's more of a combination of vocabulary, the pitch and tone of the Spanish speaker, and also the velocity or the speed at which they are speaking at. And for me, this is quite difficult to put into practice because it's very subjective. It's me just saying, okay, I think I sound better because of these different classifications, but really, I don't really know. Especially when it comes to my Spanish accent, to my Castilian accent, because I started to develop this accent about 6 months ago now, and I can't really tell if I have really advanced. Even though I do have video from then until now, it's still very challenging to really decide or make the decision. Do I sound better? Does my accent sound more strong? I don't really know. I have watched more content from Spain. I have been told by fellow language learners that I have a Castilian accent. And after watching my videos from a few months ago to now, I feel like my accent has gotten better. But has it really? How exactly am I supposed to be practicing to develop my accents? So what I have been doing mostly is just doing a lot of imitation. So I hear a Dominican, I hear a Spaniard speaking, and then I just try to imitate what they're saying. I try to imitate their pitch, their tone, and then the speed and things like that. But mostly what I do for that is just watch a YouTube video and then do the imitation. But then also, when I'm not watching anything, then I just speak to myself. And I know I'm kind of switching in between saying Castilian and Spanish accent when I'm talking about the accents from Spain. And that is because there's this big question when it comes to, is it Spanish in Spain or is it called Castellano in Spain? And then Castilian versus Spanish, it's kind of confusing. So that's why I'm a little mixed up and I kind of switch in between both of those. But if I say Spanish accent, I'm referring to the accents that they use over in Spain. How intensive should this practice be? Should I be speaking with these accents for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, or all day long for me to actually develop it and then maintain it as well for a long period of time? Because really what I've been doing for my Spanish accent is just reading my book a lot with the accent. So just doing las fotos o el cuadro de su hija desaparecida del mundo antes que yo naciera. La miraba durante un minuto o tal vez más. So I would do that a lot, or I've been doing that a lot, as much as possible when I'm reading, and then also again just speaking to myself, but I just don't know if that really is enough. It's also very hard for me to actually maintain that Spanish accent or even my Dominican accent when I am not reading, because when I'm reading, right, I have the words right in front of me, so all I have to do is focus on using the accent. But if I take away the words, I'm not reading a book, then all that has to come from my head, which takes a lot more work. For example, when I'm having conversations with my Dominican friends, that experience is way different than when I am speaking by myself here in my home. It is a lot harder to actually use this accent and use it, I would say, like a very thick accent when I'm speaking with my Dominican friends. It's not as easy as saying just sound Dominican when you speak with your friends, and that's it. There's a lot more that's going on in my head when I am trying to have a conversation. And this is something that took me a very long time to actually realize when it came to developing my Dominican accent. So when I'm having a conversation with one of my Dominican friends, this is what is going on in my head. The first thing that I'm doing, right, is listening to my friend. So I have to think about what they just said, try to comprehend it, and then after that, I have to think about what I want to say in response to what they just said. And then after that, I have to actually say what I am thinking, and that is its own skill in its own right. And then after that, on top of everything, I have to actually use my accent. So there's a ton of different things that I'm actually trying to focus on when I'm trying to use my Dominican accent, or even my Spanish accent as well, if I'm trying to have a conversation with someone. I also have to deal with my insecurities when I'm using this accent, because when I'm talking with my Dominican friend, my accent does not sound anything like his whatsoever, so I feel very strange sometimes. I feel really weird using it with them just because I don't sound, well, at least, again, this is very subjective. To me, it doesn't sound like it's anything close to his accent, and it doesn't sound strong whatsoever. So sometimes I've been very shy and not actually using it as much because I don't want to sound very weird. And I've been dealing with this type of insecurity ever since last year with this Dominican accent. And now with my Spanish accent as well. I just feel like I sound extremely strange. But we all have to start somewhere, right? And that's the other challenge, is just starting even though I feel very uncomfortable, and just practicing as much as I can even though that I don't sound maybe the best. So as you can see, learning accents and just trying to figure out what the heck that they are is very difficult for me. And you know what makes this even more complex? When I realized that there is not just one Dominican accent and there's not just one Castilian accent. So now this really brings up even more questions into my mind, like which accent should I be focusing on? Or should I be focusing on one specific accent from a particular part of the Dominican Republic or from Spain? Because right now, any Dominican accent or Castilian accent that you have heard me use so far is really just a mixture of all the different content and friends that I have listened to. It's not really tied to any specific accent that I was really focused on trying to obtain. So this is going to be really interesting to figure out how exactly I'm going to move on from here. Let me know in the comment section below, why do you think learning accents is so hard?